Hello and welcome to Chapter Select at the Movies. As per usual, I'm your host Jens. With me also your host Randy Isbell.
Hey man, how's it going? Hey, we were episode 2
Episode
of
two,
The
it's
Last of Us. I'm ready.
going very well, at least as far as The Last of Us go. Whatever else
Yes.
is happening in our lives, The Last of Us continues to deliver.
It's all that matters. It's all about fungus.
Exactly. And especially all about fungus is the prologue on this episode, which
Mm-hmm.
now makes me wonder, like, okay, is this going to be like one of the main things that sets this apart from the game? That every episode we're going to get a little bit of flashback world building
Mm-hmm.
at some other, last time it was the 1960s. Now it's 2003 again, which is where we started, but it basically means it's like just prior to the outbreak in Indonesia. Following this, she's a fungus expert who gets, pulled away from lunch, and she thinks that, like, am I under arrest? Like, what's going on with this oppressive regime that I'm living under? But no, they've got their first infected, basically, and that's.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I assume the implication is that that's the world's first kind of discovery, like that's the beginning of the outbreak.
Mm-hmm.
That was in Indonesia. It was also fun hearing, expressions like "stop the spread," expressions that were ubiquitous in the last couple of years that really were not in the original game.
Right.
So it definitely seems like they've somewhat updated it to move with the times a little bit, to like make it like, oh yeah, no, bring more real life pandemic things in for verisimilitude, because that's what
Mm-hmm.
people know, and that's how people would think it would go now, as opposed to what we knew when we made the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
I think that's kind of what they've done. They've thrown little nods to the COVID-19 stuff that we've all gone through or still going through, or whatever you want to look at it with. They did that with the first episode where they're like, "Oh yeah, you think that would be bad? Just watch this fungus stuff that
right.
can happen. Like your virus stuff ain't nothing."
Hmm.
Um, and now with this one, just imagine going, "Oh, this thing is spreading. What should we do? Bomb it?
No, yeah, exactly.
Oh,
The old Raccoon City solution.
just right." But no, I absolutely loved this opening of episode 2. I do believe that we are going to get scenes of the before times and the history of different things. I do think my prediction is episode 3, because obviously um, anyone that's played the game knows that Bill is up next and trying to get his car, and they've mentioned his name already
Hmm.
in that episode, with them saying, "Hey, you need to go see Bill, and he will take her off your hands." So they're already hinting towards it, and trailers are showing it. So I do think we're going to see Bill and Frank and their before history at the beginning of this
Hmm.
episode. It won't be as much world building; it'll be just more Bill and Frank building, because
Right at the
again,
beginning of the.
anyone that's played the game knows that Frank is not a major character and is going to get a lot more screen time in the show than he did in the game. No spoilers for those that have never played the game.
Mm, yes, yeah. We'll talk about that next time,
Mm-hmm.
since we haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah.
This time, it's really more of a Joel and Ellie and Tess showcase, as
Yes.
we see them bond and also do some very typical Last of Us things.
Oh,
Like,
so good. Before we get to that, again,
hmm,
I know I'm the one that goes down through all the rabbit holes and
oh
stuff.
yeah, yeah.
And
No, if you want to do beat by beat, we can do that.
well, not as much beat by beat, but more of I want to get your idea on a theory that had come out after the first episode that may have been confirmed by that opening section
Okay.
of episode 2. So everyone was going off about a bread theory after the first episode. It was bread that helped spread this virus, and the
Mm.
fungus got in the bread. And then here we go, beginning of episode 2. It is what was it, a flour and grain
Mm-hmm.
company in Indonesia that spread it.
Oh, you're right.
And so, if you ever want to go back and just look at the little nuances of episode 1, like the grandma, what is she doing when you first meet her? She's eating biscuits. And then Joel and Ellie,
Mm.
the entire episode, are avoiding, he's talking about being on the Atkins diet, but I think that was just to avoid, going over to his neighbors, but people have
Yeah,
been
that
relying
was
on
just an
that.
excuse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they make cookies, but Ellie never eats any of it, but the neighbors do. They didn't have flour for pancakes that morning, so they had to go with something else. Joel was supposed to bring home a cake, didn't bring home the cake. So they avoided all of these
Oh.
different things that could have infected everyone else. Was the theory in episode 1, and the way it was played off in episode 2. It's like, well, maybe people were on to something. And I just have to say, before we move on, that opening was amazing. I don't know that lady's name that played
The
that
actress.
scientist, but she like nailed home the seriousness of everything that was going on in Indonesia. And just I joked about the whole bombing thing, but that was not what you were expecting to come
No,
out of her mouth. And the
that.
seriousness of it, and
Well,
just you could just see the effect of, now I need to go home and see my family for the
yeah,
last time.
I mean, I
So
think
good.
you can read it in her face long before she says it,
Mhm.
because it's like the debrief of the prologue, but it's also, the military official is trying to, get guidance. You're the
Mhm.
expert. You help us stop this thing. What do we do? And she's like several steps ahead of him, that like,
Right.
because from the point where she looked in that zombie's mouth and the fungus was growing out of the zombie's mouth,
Mhm.
she has like known that, like, oh no, it's over, like this is
Mhm.
it. So she's had some time to come to terms with that at that point, and she's just kind of, you know it's almost like she's made peace, right? Like, I just want to spend as much time with my family as I can
Right.
until this is over, because there's not very much time left.
Beautifully
um
done.
Really, really great acting. Very
Mhm.
well done. You can it reminded me a lot of, and it makes sense because it's the same producers. In fact, there's a big part of the marketing that we haven't talked about, is that they keep
Mhm.
touting that it's like from the producers of Chernobyl. The people
Mhm.
who made Chernobyl were involved in this, and it's very much a Last of Us thing. But I do see that influence, and those are kind of two flavors that go very well together. I think, like, a little bit of the procedural, very down to earth. I mean, it's not like Last of Us didn't do that also, so it just kind of fits.
Yeah,
It's not
absolutely. And I think that was why, we've watched a lot of garbage on this show.
right.
But this is why I had like decent optimism about this project when it first got announced. Well, when it
Hmm.
got announced with these directors involved, because
Hmm.
Chernobyl was so good, and it fits the narrative style that would work well with The Last of Us. Plus, adding Neil Druckmann as part of
Hmm.
the whole
And
producing
he's
role.
directing this time
He
again.
directed this one. It's his directing debut. I thought he did a really good job, and obviously he was getting some guidance throughout the way. And I just think it was a perfect marriage between these two styles that works really well. And then
Hmm.
when you just, for the most part, follow the baseline of the game, which again, most movies or TV shows just do not do. They're like, well, we'll put the names of the characters in there and maybe a
Mm.
little bit of their style, but we're going to do our own story. So no, this is the story of The Last of Us with some extra tweaks and some fixes that Neil has changed in his mind how he wanted things to go from when this game came out. What, 8, 10 years ago now, whenever it was, so long ago. And some input from the other directors and producers, and it's just working so well.
Can you point to some more changes that you've observed in this episode, where
Uh,
it's
well,
altering things?
There's a major one at
Okay.
the end of the episode that we'll get to, but the one
Mm.
that they kind of hint at throughout the episode, or they talk about, and what I believe that if we do get a Last of Us Part 3, which, I mean, again, I think we talked about it last episode, there's enough cliffhangers and loose ends that they could, um,
Felt like they were
that
setting themselves up for it. Yeah.
that this will be part of the third game, because Neil Druckmann has even come out and said, when somebody came up with that idea, he was like, "That's brilliant," and it's the fact that this fungus works like a fungus in the jungle, and if you step on
Hmm.
a piece of it in one area, you trigger something a mile away. You kill this one zombie, it's connected with other zombies in another building, and then they come after you. It's very much what was that really bad biker zombie game?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it wasn't that bad. It was like a 6 or 7 out of 10 game, in my
That's
opinion.
fair.
Days Gone.
Days Gone. Thank you.
Mhm.
Again, I only got a few hours. I don't. The open world was just I couldn't get into it.
It had the
But
Ubisoft problem where it was just
yeah.
overwhelming, where it's like, God, this is like a, what, 30-hour game? Do I wanna spend all this time in this
Hmm.
in these environments?
But those
But
those quick moving hordes that are in that game, I can see be used in a different way in part three, and that kind of gets some ideas I think from this episode, and I think that's a really good change, and I like what they did.
yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. It, to me, feels like a screenwriting convenience
Hmm.
because it's like, okay, now you can just kind of contrive any situation that you need to. Like, oh, you stepped on the wrong piece of ground and alerted the horde,
Hmm.
kind of thing. Or I don't know if it's gonna, like, in future scenarios, and we're gonna talk about the big set piece in a little bit.
Hmm.
But in future scenarios where they're dealing with a couple of zombies, is this now like a matter of, okay, we have to like isolate these zombies somehow. We have to kill them on
Right.
higher ground. Like if they're on the second floor of a building, it's not a problem. But if they're on the ground floor, it's a problem. Like there's so much. There's obviously a lot of
Hmm.
stuff that you can do with it, but it's also something that you can probably easily ignore in most cases.
Hmm.
And like, okay, this time it just didn't trigger something. So I'm just a little concerned. Now, obviously, they just set it up and then they used it, so it hasn't been
Hmm.
arbitrary so far. But it
Right.
just feels like the kind of thing that could become arbitrary pretty
It
quickly.
definitely could, and I might see it as a way to save money, where instead of having to sneak by a horde of zombies, you're just trying to get through this area that has been taken over by the fungus, and it's one of those, if you step on the wrong spot, then you're going to trigger all of them that
Mhm,
are off screen, so we don't have to render all that stuff. We don't have to put makeup on all these people. Instead, we just have to, paint the
mhm.
floor and put all the special effects with that. Maybe it's a money saving thing down the line, but it could be a very interesting game mechanic and very difficult because you can't really place
Yeah, you
exactly
can't
where you're
look at your
stepping,
feet
right?
in a, third-person
Unless it's a
exometry game.
VR thing. Maybe we'll get The Last of Us VR, and that'll be the
Mm,
whole thing. I mean, they
yeah.
they need something to sell that PlayStation VR too, right?
Yeah, I don't know. It's almost like they needed something to replace, because they made it not airborne. So
Yes.
now it's like, okay, we're
Hmm.
adding this other level of threat where
Yeah.
basically it just becomes very easy for us to trigger any kind of zombie action that we need
Hmm.
by
Oh,
way of this.
you're talking about other changes, just character changes that I brought up in the first episode that I still absolutely love is Bella Ramsey's version of Ellie just being more crass and
Mhm,
kind of not over the top, but like Ellie had some great one-liners in the game,
mhm,
and now at this one she is even more bold with her statements, and that whole confrontation at the beginning of not the episode, but of our Ellie and Joel journey of this episode, where she's eating her sandwich and
mhm.
they're
Yeah,
just
she gets to eat
staring
bread.
right at her
She can
the
eat
whole
bread, no
time.
problem.
Yeah, but just the fact that they're just staring at her and just waiting for things to turn, and kind of the tension of that conversation added in with some of the funny lines that are going on without it. It was just pretty good. I like that scene.
Mhm. Yeah, the characterization continues to be excellent. I feel like they've tweaked Tess and Joel a little bit, but it may
Yeah.
also be my bad memory of the game because they made Joel very much from the start. Joel does not, we start with past the opening sequence. We start with a big argument, kind of at the point where we left off, where we learned that Ellie has been bitten but
Hmm.
doesn't turn. And they've watched her overnight now, and Tess is basically convinced and has hope and thinks that, like, okay, maybe she's the real deal. Maybe this could really be the cure for one. And Joel is just long, like, we've heard about this a million times. I don't
Hmm.
believe it. He still doesn't trust that she's not going to turn zombie at some point. So they, from the start, they set it up more like Joel just doesn't believe in the cure or in the prospect of anything. He's lost all hope, whereas
Yeah.
Tess has not. Um, and so Tess becomes more, I think, his anchor
Yeah.
in this episode than she was in the video game, where it's one of those things where hopefully her memory is going to inspire him down the line, to push forward. Though, of course, we can't talk about the ending, but
Right.
it also will tie nicely into the ending, I think.
Hmm.
Everything that they've done in this episode, I think they did a good job to give Joel maybe a slightly stronger arc here,
Yeah,
and tying
I think
and
so too, and that's just kind of what you can get when you don't have to have gameplay, and you can just focus on the
mhm,
story. And it's been out there for 10 years, and you still have the same director who wants to tweak
mhm,
some things and add some things. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, you go back to the original game, and Tess is just kind of there. I
right.
She
It's
never
here.
feels like she's going to be a main character. She's just kind of your sidekick for a bit that you then eventually lose in this section of the game. And while her death in the video game does prompt Joel to go, all right, I'm going to do her last bidding
Mhm,
and take her off on this journey and try to at least pass her off to somebody, if not, take her myself. Um, they did a much better job, I think, of showing the past that Tess and Joel have had,
mhm.
the relationship that they have had, not just a romantic thing, but like you said, I think you nailed it perfectly. Tess was Joel's anchor. Without Tess, I don't think Joel survives 20 years.
Right, and she's like his conscience or his Jiminy Cricket or something even in this
Hmm.
episode where, she's got this lesson to impart on him that he's not ready to learn yet, but maybe, her death and going forward, that'll all resonate. But
Hmm.
you know, I thought this is just in general, and not just because I love Anna Torv, who is great,
Hmm.
and I'm gonna miss now that they killed off the character. But with what she was given, I thought this was a big improvement over video game Tess.
Oh yeah, Anna Torv absolutely killed it. You brought it up in the first episode too. Obviously, them expanding Tess and allowing her to expand on that character absolutely helped too. But it did a great job of making you feel for when she died. I think in the video game, it happens so early on in your journey, and Tess is just again kind of that sidekick character that it
Right, and you
doesn't
got
impact you. It's
20 more hours of game after that.
out of all of the deaths that happen in the game, I think Tess ranked near the bottom as far as actual main characters are concerned. And now they made it really impactful. And they do obviously change the way she dies, and
They made it way more badass.
they made it very interesting. And I actually like the changes that they've basically taken Fedra completely out of this show.
Hmm.
Right. Which it makes sense because Fedra was basically thrown into the game just to give you more combat and more gameplay sections, and you don't need that. So we don't need Fedra. It's just about Joel and Ellie's journey through all this crazy infected. Obviously, when they get to a place like Pittsburgh, they will have to deal with actual humans
Hmm.
and all the raiders and everything there. But it made more sense. And then their journey through. We'll get to the really awesome scene with the clickers here in a second,
Hmm.
but it was after the clickers, I think, was the best moment that Anna Torv had of this entire show, where she knows she's bitten. Everyone that's played the game knows she has just been bitten because they know what's
Hmm.
about to happen, but regular audience do not, and Joel and Ellie do not. And her just sitting on that rooftop for that extra few seconds and
Hmm.
just kind of pondering what she's going to do with this last little moment of her time. It's so good. It's amazing by Anna.
Yeah, yeah, she's wonderful. Everybody continues to be really good. I mean, I don't know if we'll have anything negative to say about any of the acting in this from what we've seen so far. But yeah, so I think you're right. It's a good idea to skip like some of the, groups and infighting in the initial
Mhm.
town because who cares? Get
Yeah.
the characters on the road, get them on the journey, get the story started. You're right. All that stuff is just tutorial.
Mhm.
It doesn't have narrative value as much. So it makes perfect sense. When they get to is that that's not Pittsburgh. What city are they? Are
We're
they
in Boston right now.
Oh yeah, that's Boston. Right.
Mhm.
Sorry. So yeah, I've even been to Boston and did not think of that. But yeah, so going through Boston, what it reminded me of actually, and I don't know if we've ever seen this movie, Logan's Run.
I have not.
Okay, in Logan's Run, one of the big kind of set pieces of the movie, one of the one of the things the movie's building up to is there's this future civilization, post-apocalyptic, and there's two of them that finally leave like the dome that they all live in and venture into the outside world, and they go to they come across Washington D.C., and we see like Washington D.C. all overgrown, like obviously the big influence of when you think of games like Fallout, whenever they do their concept art, that's kind of the thing that Logan's Run was doing. And I've always thought that Logan's Run was maybe the best depiction of like a post-apocalyptic, overgrown, a city that you recognize, but everything is kind of taken over by vines and things.
Mm-hmm.
And man, Boston is a contender. Like it looks amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Some
I know
of those,
a lot of people are making fun of they use CGI and such. Of course they have to, but it looked
making
really good.
fun of it. I mean, the CGI looks great.
When you have such a great show like this, people have to nitpick and stuff. And
yeah, but
that is one of the nitpicks I've seen, and it's like this.
The nitpick is that
it looks great.
The nitpick is that there is CGI.
Yeah,
that's
the noticeable CGI. It's like
noticeable.
Okay, of course, there's CGI people.
I thought the CGI was incredibly well done.
I thought it was good.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not agreeing with them, but
okay,
I'm just saying from things that I have seen.
Yeah, but I mean, Logan's Run obviously is using matte paintings and stuff, and does an amazing job of that. But I mean, digital matte paintings. This is the modern equivalent of it. Thought it worked really well. So I love that. And then yeah, they show there's this shot, when they're still on the roof and they're looking down at the street, and you see it's really weird. It's like one of the most disconcerting things I've seen in a zombie movie or TV show, where the zombies are just kind of like milling about on the ground, like they're just rolling around on the ground, and then there is just this like streak of light that keeps passing over them, and every time that the streak of light passes over the zombie horde on the ground, they start like twitching as if they were in agony. And then when the light passes them by, they stop twitching. So you just like, okay, they're weirdly like reactive to sunlight, and they're interacting with the ground in some way. But man, it was an eerie thing.
And they do such a good job where I think most directors or most shows would zoom in on this stuff and make it very apparent what's going on down there.
Yeah, we just see it from a distance.
Yeah, that whole shot was up from the rooftop. You can kind of look, and the whole time you're like, are they rolling? What are they doing down there? And I think that's exactly what they were wanting to do. And obviously it'll play in through the next 7 episodes, I'm sure. And it continues. It's obviously, I think some of them are rolling on the ground so they can be in contact with the rest of this fungus telephone system that they have created in the city of Boston, and it'll be really interesting. I liked it a lot.
Oh, you think they were communicating or something?
Maybe, or just listening in, or I mean, again, as a fungus in them, so I'm sure
literally
the sun does mess with them, and
like the expression "put your ear to the ground" kind of thing.
Yeah, maybe. I don't. Well, we will kind of see how it all goes, and maybe it's one of those things that you have to roll around, because if you don't roll around at all, then you get stuck to the ground. The fungus just hooks you in and then turns you into a clicker. So I don't know.
I want to know more about what was going on there, but it was eerie. And you're right. I thought it was very effective. Something they've been doing throughout, apart from obviously the prologues and stuff where we see other perspectives. But they've been very good with the zombie encounters to have it be just from the perspective of the characters that we're following, and not showing us any more than the characters would see.
All right, I want to get your opinion on the clicker scene in the museum, and how do you think the introductions to these creatures worked for you?
Oh, I thought it was great. So yeah, after they kind of see that horde that's milling about on the ground, they, as you say, go through. Like, okay, we're going to go around them. We're going to pass through this museum, and this is about maybe 10 minutes of this episode or so, where we're just in like, okay, this is a classic, like a Last of Us level, right? We gotta
Mhm.
We gotta sneak our way through this abandoned and scary building. There might be zombies around that we're going to trigger, and then we're going to have a close quarters combat encounter. That's exactly what happens. I mean, that was like, wow, you talk about translating game to screen.
Yes.
They did an amazing job of that. I do think that I did have, during some of the sneaking around, I did have the feeling of like, yeah, it'd be better if I was playing this. Like, it
Right.
did have a little bit of the because it was something that you recognize so clearly as an
Mhm.
interactive sequence that you're like, oh, this should be
So
interactive, maybe.
So two things on that topic. I'm gonna hit
Hmm.
the low hanging fruit, and every other media that I have watched have said the same thing. It is
Yeah.
shocking to me that they got my gameplay from The Last of Us in this
Yours
scene,
because of the screw ups.
just because of you try to sneak, it doesn't work, and then you just run around frantically trying to kill things.
Hmm.
Many people have made that joke. It's far from an original take. And two, we when they announced that they were coming out with The Last of Us Part One, basically remake,
Hmm.
remodeling game last fall, and everyone freaked out. Why do we need the third version of this game, and why are we doing that?
Hmm.
This is exactly why, and they're
Is
doing
it?
it so brilliantly because now with PlayStation Plus, where they do their updates mid-month, you can now play you get 2 free hours if you're a PlayStation Plus
Oh, okay.
premium member. I think whatever one has the game trials. But now they've added a 2 hour trial of The Last of Us Part One. So hey, you liked what you've seen from the first couple episodes, you could play 2 hours and then come join in on the fun. And by the way, I have seen side by sides of what The Last of Us looked like in the
Hmm.
original game compared to Part One, and anyone says that it's no improvement is blind.
Hmm.
But I'm with
But
you where I've watched these 2 episodes and I'm just going, so when do I start my next run of The Last of
yeah,
Us?
exactly. I want to be playing this. But yeah, no, the clicker. I thought the clicker looked great.
Mhm.
I thought the initial kind of appearance of him, and their frantic attempts to take pot shots at him, and then Joel is like wrangling with him, and Tess is taking a shot, and uh, really, really well done. Very exciting.
The only thing that we missed out on, and I think it
Mhm.
would have nailed home a joke, is Ellie should have thrown a sandwich at it. Because
Right?
I
Yeah.
think that might be my favorite line of this whole show so
Yeah.
far.
Yeah. He
It's like,
doesn't want to give her a gun, so
can I have a
he's gonna.
gun? No, you can't have a gun. Oh, fine, I'll just throw a sandwich at it. So it would have been great if all of a sudden the clicker sees Joel and screams, and all of a sudden a sandwich comes just bouncing
Maybe
off
that
of it.
callback will be later in the
That
season.
would be good too. But no, I thought that scene that was very tense.
Hmm.
I'm with you. The practical effects that they use on the clickers is beautiful, and they do a fantastic job with that. And yes, it's 1,000% exactly how it feels like in the games, especially when you screw up as they do. Where it's, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, it's going to be great, and then all hell breaks loose, and then it's like, well, I've now used all of my weapons. I wish I had the assault rifle that he did at the beginning of the game, but I don't. It's not a nitpicky thing. It works well for the show, but
He doesn't get that weapon until later.
exactly. But it's. I wish I had it that early. I would have used all of the bullets. That's for sure.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I thought it was great. Yeah, that's really, I mean, that's the episode, right?
Yeah. And then we get to
We
the
get character
ending.
building. Oh yeah, yeah. We get the journey through Boston and through the hospital and then or the museum. Sorry, and then yeah, we get to the what I guess would have been the drop off point.
Yes. Yeah. They were
And
meeting at the Capitol for the drop off.
yeah, so they're meeting. They're supposed to meet some fireflies there, and the fireflies are all dead. And of course, the horde is coming. So, and we've just learned that Tess is infected, so it's time for Tess to have her last stand to help
Mhm.
Joel and Ellie get away.
So
And
did you like? So you said you liked the change because it was Fedra officers that attack in the game, and
mhm,
here they kill the infected that were on the ground that
mhm,
were the fireflies. I also love that line of was there a firefight here or whatever, or was there who
mhm.
killed them? And it's like, no, one
Yeah,
got infected and they all killed each other.
yeah. Everybody lost. The
And they
infected and the
all,
non-infected all lost.
so it was like that was a really fantastic line. But that was where we kind of see the whole fungus talking to each other, because the fungus, they show it kind of wrapping around one of the dead infected, and then here comes the rest of the horde, and that is where Tess goes, "You need to take her to Bill," which is
Mhm.
the same kind of thing they do in the game. Just usually there's Fedra people trying to break down the door. You need to take him to Bill. He will take him off your hand, and we can make this still work. And then the infected come running in, and it was shot very interestingly, and I liked it.
Mhm. So, as far as the change, I generally expect a lot less Fedra and a lot less
Mm-hmm.
human death in this show than in the game. Uh, Not that, obviously, I still think, the greatest monster of all is man and all that. Those are still
Mm-hmm.
going to be themes. I mean, those are themes of a lot of zombie stories, if not most. Uh, but while I definitely think there's going to be evil humans for them to contend with, I don't think we're going to get, oh no, there's, 50 Fedra officers outside
Right.
of our door that we need to murder now. Just because you just wouldn't want your TV series protagonists to be just killing that many regular humans
Oh yeah. And
all the
honestly,
time.
I thought about this more than I should, but I
Mhm.
I think we have 3 scenes left that they will keep, that will be Joel and Ellie fighting actual humans, or
Mhm.
Joel fighting actual humans. I think there's only 3 that they will keep, and all of them are very,
Yeah.
very impactful.
Though we can't, yeah,
Yeah,
I
we're not going to
know, I
spoil
think which
anything.
ones you're talking about, but we can't
Hmm.
talk about them yet. Uh, but it definitely is a thing where, even the ending, I think the ending is going to be a lot less, um, sorry, I should say a lot more impactful than it would be if Joel and Ellie were just these like murder machines
Hmm.
throughout the show, like they are in the video game. Uh, Kind of the same situation as, and I don't know, did we review the Uncharted movie? I think we might have.
No, that
Uh,
came out after we went on break.
oh darn. Well, I watched it by myself anyway,
Yes, I have seen it too.
and
And we will need to rewatch it, because I want your takes on
well, yeah, I have some takes for sure. Uh,
it.
but that's an analog for me where imagine that Uncharted movie if Nathan Drake shot as many people as he does in the video. Like,
Oh
imagine
yeah,
if
yeah,
in that
yeah.
movie if Nathan Drake was just mowing down hundreds of people in his quest
No,
for
I
treasure.
not to go down a crazy rabbit hole, but the Uncharted movie made it a more comical way of eliminating enemies than the I'm just
Hmm.
switching through all my guns to blast through waves of enemies.
Yeah. So, that works a lot better for a movie where you're supposed to like the hero.
Hmm.
And I think the same thing is true here. I think, when they have to take some human lives, it'll be a big deal, and they'll make a big thing out of it. Where
Hmm.
it'll be very visceral
Yeah.
and meaningful. So I'm definitely
No.
think it's coming, but
Hmm.
makes sense that we don't have a shootout here, or that Tess isn't blowing up a bunch of soldiers.
Right.
Her.
And it is funny that you bring up Uncharted, because we get a nod to Uncharted in this scene with Tess and the lighter not working. That is
Mm.
straight out of the Uncharted movie. That just refuses to light the whole time.
Yeah, that just made me wish, like, she had the time, she could have just grabbed one of the many, many grenades off the floor
Yeah.
before the
Speaking of, why
zombies get
didn't
too.
Joel and Ellie take some of the grenades off the floor? And
Should have taken
we
some
might we
grenades.
might need this.
Yeah. Well, they didn't have a lot of time, so it
No, no, no.
makes sense. But like Tess, it just seemed like she had maybe 30 seconds where she could have done something. But again, she didn't know that her lighter was not going to work. So,
Hmm.
at that point, maybe it was already too late. Uh, but yeah, I wasn't super crazy about the lighter malfunction part of it.
Right.
Um, that it's, I don't know, it's a bit of a, it's a thing we've seen before. It's a bit of cliche. I didn't even remember that it was an Uncharted thing. I just was like, oh yeah, this again. A lot of
Oh,
shows do this.
you should remember it's an Uncharted thing. They used it 74 times in that movie.
Oh wow, okay.
That's not true. But they used it a lot. And
Well,
I'm a fan of that movie. But it's not good.
it's not a good movie. Yeah, The lighter, that was the least thing I was paying attention to. We'll talk about that at some
Oh yeah,
point.
we'll get to that once we get through The Last of Us
I've
for
got
sure.
words about it.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna have. Well, that'll be a really fun episode because here's a sneak preview of that episode. Jens, you're 1,000% right with everything that you just said about how horrible this movie is, but I had fun, and that'll be kind of how that show goes. I think.
You know, I just want to go back to if you're saying people are complaining about the CGI in
Mm-hmm.
The Last of Us, the CGI in The Last of Us is on another level. It's in a totally different stratosphere
Mm-hmm.
than the CGI in the Uncharted movie, which is a theatrical movie.
Yeah, no,
But like
100.
they're in
Again, like I said,
horrible.
I don't agree with it, but when you have such great content like we have with this show, you're gonna try to make up
I
whatever you
guess
can, and
it's just
it is what it is.
there's so many horrible CGI environments in that Uncharted movie. Like they
Oh yeah,
didn't do anything for real in that movie.
no,
So
absolutely not. All
it
right,
could be much worse.
do you have a score for episode 2, sir?
Hmm. That's a great question. I don't think it's quite as strong as the first
Yeah,
episode.
I'm with you.
Um, but it's very good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it has big highlights, maybe not as big as, the outbreak driving scene in the first one. Um, but you know, it's just kind of continuing a really high level of quality. Can't really ding it very much. It doesn't do anything wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm just gonna go a half a point. I'm just gonna go to a 9.5.
That's funny because I went down just half a point from my 9.5 to a 9, and
Mhm.
I almost didn't. I almost just kept it the same, but
Yeah.
I just feel at this point that we're gonna have 9.5s for me if I had not changed it a little
I
bit.
mean, that'd be fine if it's true,
It
you
could
know?
be. Um, Again, I'm with you. There wasn't any like major missteps in the episode at all. I thought the opening was super impactful for not having any actual like main characters in it and just kind of showing you
Mhm.
the origin and doing it in a way where somebody that just wants to watch the show is like, oh, that's interesting. This is the beginning of the outbreak, and then you get people like myself and all these different people on YouTube that are like breaking down every possible segment of
Hmm.
it and then going into theory mode and tweaking things. And again, that's why I like Maximilian Dude and all of his takes on Final Fantasy VII Remake. So it's just fun to think about while we wait for the second game to come out. And now, my girlfriend has said that she really wishes this was like a Netflix show instead. So we just got all 9 episodes so we could just binge it.
Oh,
Because
yeah,
the
sure.
waiting, we've gotten to that point where just waiting a week just sucks. So, like, even in some of the other shows that we watch, like, we're both Survivor fans, that
Mhm.
we will wait a couple weeks into the season so we can sit down and watch 2 or 3 episodes at a time
Mhm.
and pretend we're binging it. And you just can't with The Last of Us. But it is nice to now have this week of theory making that you don't get when it's binging because there's just nothing to theorize because everyone's watched it already.
I'm of two minds about this. I love binging as much as the next guy.
Mm-hmm.
But there is with certain shows, especially shows that are very intense, like this
Yeah.
one, it is actually nice to have that break and to have time to like process it
Oh,
and
yeah.
let it sit. And I think we missed that. And there's something lost in the discourse with a Netflix show
Mm-hmm.
because when a Netflix show comes out, there'll be 2 or 3 days of conversation while everybody binges it, and then it is swiftly forgotten by everyone.
Yeah. 100%.
So, the weekly release schedule just I mean, Mandalorian I think proved that out with its run of the first season. Because that was such a big weekly water cooler show in the way that shows used to be. If you think back at like, man, remember when Lost was a thing and we would
Mm-hmm.
talk about Lost every week or Game of Thrones. Um, so I like that The Last of Us is a water cooler show like that. I think it's the right choice. I think it's going to give it legs, and I think especially for people, the people you're watching are people who are like fanatic about the game.
Yep.
And if you're a fanatic about the game and you already know all the big things, of course you're going to focus on the minutia. But I like to think of this as a show for normal people, actually, because it
Well,
doesn't.
it shows with how many people are watching this thing.
Exactly, it totally is, right? It's obviously made to be, a real prestige television show, and not just, we dashed off, a license thing because we got the license to something with an IP and a name recognition that we want to make some money off, which is how most video game movies happen.
Yeah, but for sure, congratulations to everyone that's made this. What was it? 5.7 million people watched it. Like
Wow,
that
yeah.
first day, which was up 22% from their last week's record-breaking stuff. And I want to say it took 2 days for them to get over 10 million, according to this Variety report that I'm looking at. Episode 1 is now up to 18 million viewers.
That's amazing.
So it's been fantastic, and they do a great job of satisfying those that are fans of the game, but still making it really goddamn good.
Yeah.
And everyone else out there, please take notice. All those people that are making the 98,000 video game adaptations right now, Fallout, God of War. It's too late for Gran Turismo, because what the hell is that? But
is there a trailer
for which?
For Gran Turismo?
There's a sneak peek looking thing. I'll send it to you when we get done.
Okay.
But it's too late for that show.
For
the rest of them, this is how you do it.
Yeah, I mean, I have my doubts about Fallout.
Yeah, me too.
It's a good setting. You can do things with it. You don't have to do any of the game's stories, but
and the fact that they've already came out saying it's a brand new vault, so it's going to be a brand new story. So it's all about the setting. So hopefully they just nail the story and hit the setting right. But
yeah, I'm very skeptical.
Which we have to be in this line of work.
And that's an Amazon show. I don't know. Did you watch? Speaking of that sort of thing, where do you stand on the Amazon's Lord of the Rings?
I have not watched that yet. I am literally, I got way behind on stuff. I am 2 episodes into House of Dragon to show you.
Yeah.
All this stuff started coming out, and my life was super busy, and it was like, I don't want to get into this right now. And I've stuck to the goofier shows like Stranger Things and Cobra Kai. Like I'll keep up with those because they're shorter. But yeah,
I know that much. I mean, but that's the problem with binging also, right? Like, I'm much less likely to even embark on a show if it just dumps, a dozen episodes on me at a time versus something that I can consume in smaller increments. And I wasn't even with this, like, I mean, I was going to check it out. I wasn't like super hype or had huge expectations, or, like I could see in an alternate universe where I may not even have started watching it yet. Last of Us.
Right.
So it's really you suggesting that we're starting the podcast back up. That's like, okay, cool. I have a reason. Yeah. Even though it's something that my wife won't watch with me, I have to watch it by myself. I can imagine that I'm like, I'm kind of watching it with Randy, I guess. So it's still a social thing.
And then I have to bug you throughout the week. Have you watched it yet? Have you watched it yet?
Well, I don't get to watch on Sunday night usually. So it's like a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday thing for me, whichever night I can make time.
I'm the exact opposite. I'm glad it's out on Sunday because that's like the one night I can just chill.
Okay.
So it works out really good. If it came out like on a Monday night, who knows? I could watch it during the day, but I wouldn't be able to watch it with Haley, and then she'd yell at me.
Yeah.
That's how that goes.
I'm glad that's working out so far. It just means that, we're not going to be like day and date, or like, we're not doing a discussion, the day after.
And honestly, I kind of like it because then I get to go down the wormhole a little bit before we have our discussion.
Yep. Which is the exact opposite tag of what I'm doing. I'm shutting myself off from everything that's not the show itself. So
I like it. All right, 2 episodes down. It's been fantastic.
Yep. Enjoying it. More.
All right. that is going to do it for our second episode of The Last of Us HBO show. If you have made it this far and you've not watched the episodes, I don't know what you're doing, but please go do it. And yeah, let us know what you think as well for the show. We'll be back next week with episode 3. I feel like it's going to be more of a spin-offy episode. They'll hit some main story bits, but I think we're going to get more of backstory than the
Didn't
game
watch
hit,
the preview, so I'll be surprised.
absolutely. It'll be fantastic. But we'll be back next week talking about that. But for now, that's Jens. I'm Randy. We'll see you next week. But until then,
Cheerio.
we